let's stitch a whipped wheel stitch. You'll need a generous length of 3 strands of thread, tie a knot in the end and trim off the excess. You can see I've already drawn 5 points around this central one here. What we're going to do is start by coming up through the top one on the outer edge and going down through the middle. We need to stitch these little spokes onto the wheel so that we can weave around it. Now the whipped wheel isn't always stitched as often as the woven wheel. I have another tutorial for that as well, because that's also in my latest book, the Modern Embroidery Handbook. But I love this stitch. It makes a really lovely texture, great in patterns, great as an individual motif. It's just a really fun one to try. So if you haven't tried it, you should definitely give it a go. Okay, so now when you stitched all 5 of the spokes on, what we're going to do is just come up as close as you can to the centre there, just like that. I'm just going to move that up so you can see that there. And then what we'll be able to do now is do all of the stitching on top, so we're not going to go through the fabric for a while now. So what we're going to do, we've come up just at the top of this spoke here, we're going to go back underneath that one, just like that, and move it to the middle. Now we're going to repeat that again, so we're going to go back over under that one, sorry, but then also under the next one along as well. So we're not going through the fabric at all, you're just going underneath the stitches, and then it will wrap around that spoke. So each time we do this now, we're going to go back over that one that we've just come under, and also under the next one. Back under and under the next one. I'm trying to keep my hoop relatively still just to show you the basics of this. But I actually do like to spin mine round. So I'm going to start by doing that now. Just didn't want to do it at first so we don't get dizzy. But I find it much easier to move it around. As with all hand embroidery stitches, you've got to do what works for you. That's one of the things I love about it. You know, there are tried and tested ways to do the stitches, but actually, if you've got a way that helps you do it a little bit easier, then the great thing about it is that you can just go with it. Everybody's different. Now, this one does take a little while to build up, so just keep going with it. Make sure each time that your stitches are going towards the middle, and if they're not, you can just use your needle to ease them in, because we want to make sure that you've got full coverage. So I'm going to keep turning the hoop. So remember, keep going back under the one that you've just gone through and the next one along. And it's just kind of a lovely rhythmical stitch. You just got to keep going round and round and round all the way until you've filled it all. Now, as you move further along, what you'll actually see is we're covering the bottom here with the stitching, but then there's a thread wrapping over each of the spokes, so you get that lovely pattern. So I hope that that's starting to build up for you now, if you're stitching along with me. If your thread starts to get a little bit twisted, just hold it up and it'll spin out, because sometimes it does that as you move around. I've obviously drawn on a massive stitch here. I don't know why I did it this big. I was trying to keep these little tutorial videos nice and short. But this one's going to be a bit longer because I've done a massive whipped wheel stitch. That's okay though, bear with me. We're nearly there. Once you've got it going and you're into a rhythm, it does build up nice and quick. I guess you could leave it here if you wanted. You'd get once you've got rid of the pen, you know, you'd have a little sort of starry effect, I guess. Maybe we could just do that. See if I can get a few more stitches in. Whoops. Try not to get tangled around the screw on the hoop. There we go. Just sort out that working thread. It happens to the best of us, especially when you're recording. That's usually when I do it. Okay, so you'll have to also just play around with the tension of this. You'll kind of get a feel for it as you go. You can really see that effect now. So you get that raised sort of star shape on top of effectively a sort of flat circular disc, and I love it. It's such a lovely effect, this stitch. I'm going to get back to the top and finish there, so just a couple more to do. What I'm going to do is just wrap over the top of that next one. Push my needle through there just to finish that off. There we go, isn't that fabulous? I love it. Such an underrated stitch, this one. That's the whipped wheel.